everybody, Patrick from WP Builder Helper, and in today's video we're going to talk about making a business logo. So many people need logos for various different reasons, and I want to talk about all the different ways that you could take and you could make a logo, because there's hundreds of different ways. Even though in essence you're going to argue, well, I mean, this really isn't part of the whole website thing, but it kind of is. I mean, if you have a bad logo can do horrible things to your website. I mean, if you look at all of the best websites that are out there, they all have, simple logos. Essentially, you've got Google you've got Elementor that's got a logo, that's got a decent logo. A brand as a whole is something that you need to take and decide on and decide what you're going to do with your brand, how you're going to do it. Are you just going to have a logo type kind of like this? Or are you going to have something that actually says Elementor or whatever? You could have something like Brizzy, where Brizzy I think has their brand. Although I would argue their brand probably needs to be a little bit changed a little bit, because I think this logo could use an updating. But overall, because the builder's a little bit hard to read, they could probably just go with Brizzy. I think everybody at this point knows that they're a builder. I don't even think they need to add in the builder anymore. I think they could just drop it. But branding is important, and there's a lot that goes into branding. And there's some people who are willing to pay the thousands upon thousands of dollars to a designer to take and build a brand for them. And there's other people who are not willing to pay that money. So I want to give you some different options just so you can know how to build a simple logo and what you can do to get a simple logo today. And if you wanted something, there's plenty of places you could go to, but I want to mention it. So the first place I want to talk about is Canva. If you've never been here before, it's canva.com, and there's a bunch of different places you could go, but once you're inside, you have the ability to go in here and pick a logo. And if you go up into the top right, you can select the type of logo that you want. So let's say you're an app. Let's say an app business. I'm sure, I guess that doesn't work the way I thought it did. I thought that you could actually pick out logos, but apparently you can't. That kind of sucks. So you have to go through this little by little, but once you find a logo that you're good with, like let's say you're building something for whatever, esports or whatever the case is, you can import this in here, you can change the font, and you can go in here and you can change the font to whatever, Dragon Club, whatever it is. And then you can export it. You can go out here and you can export it. So this is a really simple logo, but the problem is people are going to say, well, I have an issue with this. And they'll say, this is going to look like everybody else's logo. And that is true, because it essentially is a basic logo. But let me tell you something that you can do to kind of customize this to make it a little bit better. I'm not sure if this logo is grouped, so I'm going to see real quick. I think it is grouped. Let me see. So see what I did there? They have two different sets of logos technically on this. They have a shield that's in the background, then they have this that's in the foreground. So the dragon's one logo, the shield's another. So if you delete the shield, you've already made a modification to it. And then if you keep going into this and you change the color of it and you make the dragon more of a, a purple with something else, yeah, you're not exactly making massive alterations to the dragon, but that's not the point. The point is you're making it yours, and that's a big thing that people often forget about. They forget that making small modifications and just not going with what everybody else has all of a sudden turns it into a different brand. And yes, it's still a clone of somebody else's brand, but the fact is you can kind of go in here and you can play with it, and I think that there's even other things you can do. If that doesn't work for you and you just don't want to deal with that, you don't want to deal with Canva, or maybe you just don't feel like it, or it doesn't have what you need, you definitely have pros that you can use. So if you go to something like Fiverr has tons and tons of logos. And back in the day, I used to work on Fiverr, and it was just crazy. It's the quality of the logo that you get for some of the prices are so low that it's almost hard for anyone who isn't it's hard for anyone who isn't living in America to actually make money on. I know there's people who do it, because obviously $80 for a logo is, it's okay. but usually logos are hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Some of them are thousands depending on the brand. Like you wouldn't expect Nike to pay $80 for a logo because that would be bullshit. It just is what it is. So you got to take the good with the bad with the whole logo situation. So Fiverr is definitely another place that you could go for logos if you wanted to do some basic logos. A lot of these people do some decent logos. Like obviously, look at this one. He's got over 1K, and that looks like a good logo. Although you could argue, it looks a little bit too much like Cheetos brand, but still, this guy obviously does great logos, and I think they start off at 35 and go all the way up to $120. Word of caution when you do something on Fiverr, regardless of what they do, always ask for the source file. Ask for the source file. You need the source file. And that either needs to be an AI file, an SVG, or an EPS, some sort of combination of that. You need to have the source file. Do not let them just give you a PNG and JPEG. That is going to suck later on down the road when you want to edit that logo or you want to make changes to the colors. Do not let somebody just give you that. Always pay for the source file. That's a tip from me. You always want the source file. Even if it costs you extra, get the source file. It's totally worth it to get the source file and see how they did what they did. But this guy does some good logos. I mean, they look fairly, like I would argue that one's too much like Android. You could get sued doing that, but fairly good logos, fairly decent. I don't think that they look bad. So that's another way that you can go. Finally, the last one that you could do is definitely Upwork, although it's not the only network that you can go on. Upwork is a little bit more expensive, but in all reality, if you go to design and you were to say logos, I'm sure you could get designers that come up with all kinds of logos who would take and do logos for you. Yep. So you've got this guy who does 65 an hour, 35 an hour, 40 an hour, 90 an hour, modern logos, 45 an hour, tons of logo ideas. And finally, at the very end, if you want to take and do this, you don't have to do this, but if you want to do it, you could also use something like Affinity Designer. Affinity Designer, if you don't know, is a design program that's similar to Illustrator. The difference with Affinity Designer is basically this is a logo we were working on. This is just an idea. Affinity Designer is a vector program, but it's a cheap vector program. I think Affinity runs, if I am not mistaken, I think it's like either 35 to 50. It's so funny. So you have ads from Illustrator. Look at these ads. $230, $600 for Photoshop. You go to Affinity Designer, which is like 100 times better than their stupid things. And I think for just the designer by itself, yeah, $50. And you can get it for Windows, Mac, iPad, whatever you want. But Affinity Designer is pretty nice. It makes everything vector. You can use vector with it, so you could open up all these files and you can play with them. And finally, one last tip is if you're looking for maybe some images or something to work with, try something like Deposit Photos. Deposit Photos has a great library. I use them all the time. You can type in logo, and sometimes you're going to find stuff that works for you, sometimes you're not. They have a lot of these logo sets, like ultimate logo sets, where you can go and you can look at them and you can see these different logos that are here. These are not great logos by any means. Once again, I'd recommend that you customize it if you go through and use it. But you can get some ideas for something. It's better than nothing. They've got a lot of logos on here if you wanted to make it your own and maybe not pay for someone. It's just a little bit cheaper. But I would always recommend that you pay somebody for their talent. If somebody's got the ability to make you a logo, allow them to make you a logo. If you want something cheap, or you're just starting out, or you got a business and you're doing like a proof of concept, then you could probably go with something like this. In all of these photo sites, there's a lot of vector sites that are out there. You can find some free stuff. Once again, I don't technically recommend that you use it, but if you're going to use it, like vector art, I think you can type in vector art, like vector stock. So there's different websites out here where you can take and you can find some vector art and There's free vectors if you want to use it. Like a lot of these are probably cost something, but you could add it to a cart. Don't know how much it cost. Am I blocking it? Let me see. It won't show me. It won't even show me the cart. In cart. Okay. That's weird. It won't even show me the cart. Oh, I guess you got to log in before it'll show you the cart. But there's a bunch of people who you can come in and you can find, and if you like this logo and you're like, yes, I love this logo. Oh, so it'll show you how much it is. So pay per image is $14 if you wanted to just buy this straight out. And if you wanted a credit, it would be $1, and subscription is 69 cents. And that's standard for print, advertising, design. Extended is resale, reproduction, and all of that. So typically you could go with standard for yours, and then look, they've even got a customizing option if you wanted to customize it, and you can basically download this photo. You can download this and you can probably get it as a vector, and then you can have it and you can go in this program here and you can edit it and change the colors around or do whatever you wanted to do. So that's my tip. If you're looking for a logo, that's the best way to do it, honestly. And if you're looking for fonts or something, especially if you're doing web design, something like, I've mentioned this before, but they have this website called FontPair, or FontPair.co. This is a great website for finding fonts. It essentially allows you to kind of look at what your headers and your body font could be. You typically do want to stick with 2 fonts, which is why I think it's great. But a lot of these are great fonts because they're just simply Google fonts, which are, free display fonts. Now, you're not going to get anything very customized out of this, but if for some reason you wanted to use this font, we can go in here and you can literally download this font. Now, granted, they have a license to it that you can use, and there's different licenses for it. So it's under open font license. You can use it freely in products. You got to make sure that you're aware of this, because you don't want to just grab any font and stick it out there, because if you're not using it legally, then that's a big thing. But for most of these fonts that are on Google Fonts, they're like open license fonts, which means you can just grab it and stick it on your computer, install it, and start using it in whatever program you want to. So like this is Fira Sans, which is a pretty popular font, and you can go in and you can customize this however you want and make it yours, essentially. Like, you can change up the lettering, you can do whatever you want to it. So it's a simple tip. A lot of people are going to say, I already know this, or I don't care about fonts, or whatever the case is. I get it. But for those people who are starting new businesses, or maybe they're struggling and they're trying to figure out a way that they can take and get a logo for cheap, that's probably the best way. I'd recommend that you actually pay good money for a logo, because it does make a difference with the amount of copyright, trademark infringement, and everything else that's in this world. I would suggest you paying good money for a logo and not using one that's off one of these free sites. Unless, like I said, it was something that you take like this and then you customize it to make it your own. Okay, well then it's going to look a lot less than your regular thing. So if you're adding in, colors on it just to this sounds so funky, but if you're adding colors and you're taking and you're going in here and you're making it your own and you're customizing the actual logo type, like if this looked like this, well, now all of a sudden someone probably doesn't have this. Someone may have used this, but I doubt it. I mean, granted, this looks terrible. But the point is not that. The point is you're doing this to make it your logo. You're customizing this to make this your logo. You're going in there and you're adding this to it, regardless of whether this looks fine to you or whatever. There's going to be people out there who's going to say this looks like crap. That's not the point. The point is to go in here and to literally kind of add it to where it's your logo. Nobody's going to have that logo. That's unique. That's your own feature. I mean, going in and customizing it, that's what you're actually paying for somebody to do. Now, granted, you may not want that, and like I said, that looks like trash. But that was just a quick logo that we were kind of throwing together that I was just using to take and kind of show you what you could do. So hopefully you've enjoyed this. I know that this is a small video, but I just kind of wanted to get it out there, talk about it, because I know, some people are always curious about logos, and it's just something I wanted to talk about. All right, I will see you guys next time.